Gustav, we've just been talking off camera, and you're not really a fan of LNG as a fuel for tankers.
I see this causing huge indirect emissions of CO2 emissions. So they haven't really been captured in any study we've done so far. I have a study that says that indirect emissions of CO2 might increase, total emissions of CO2 might increase with well over 100% due to this new sulfur regulation.
Perhaps contrary to popular perception, it's your view that actually the ecas will do more harm than good.
Well, when it comes to CO2, definitely so. When it comes to sulfur, I'm not so sure. But when it comes to CO2, definitely so. No doubt. So if we look at statistics, what has happened, really, we would think that refineries would upgrade the heavy fuel oil that were previously used by the shipping industry. That has not been the case. Instead, the refining industry has just increased crude oil throughput, resulting in more of all oil products in order to meet the added demand from the shipping industry of gas oil. When they do that, all oil products will be burned eventually, and that causes increased CO2 emissions. So it's an indirect effect.
And emissions will increase by a magnitude of what?
Well over 100%, but it depends on how you measure it. So I'm advocating really that emissions from crude oil, from fuel oil, they should not be fully attributed to fuel oil. You should actually allocate some emissions from the fuel oil to some other high-value oil products. So it depends on how you measure. I mean, what is the baseline really? But well over 100% is the increase. That is doubtless so.
Through to 2020?
In 2020, emissions might increase with well over 1 billion tons of CO2.
So what's the answer?
The answer is really to keep using fuel oil in the shipping industry. I'm not saying that we should abandon the sulfur regulations. The sulfur regulation is good because it's good for our health and everything. But let's say we encourage the use of scrubbers, then that could really decrease CO2 emissions and sulfur emissions instead of switching to some other fuel that will cause increased CO2 emissions.
How optimistic are you that industry will wake up to this reality and change its ways?
I'm not sure that it is the industry's job really to do this. At first I have to get IMO and some governmental agencies to really address this problem, and that has been really problematic so far. The IMO won't listen really because they implemented this sulfur regulation, and now that I come and say that this causes increased CO2 emissions, they're not so happy about it. That's a natural response really. I mean, if you fight for something, then it happens, and then it turns out, okay, this wasn't the best impact. That's naturally something you want to, shrug away from.